Scientists exploring the ocean found over 50 brand new species, including a glowing dragonfish and a bizarre creature that might be the longest animal on Earth. Deep beneath the Pacific, researchers discovered strange structures, possibly remnants of an ancient lost piece of Earth, and in the wreck of a World War II aircraft carrier, they found something no one expected. These are newly discovered ocean anomalies. In April of 2024, scientists went on a 40-day deep-sea expedition along the Salis Ridge near Easter Island. What they found was incredible. Glowing dragonfish, bright red sea toads, something called a squat lobster, and weird noodle-like creatures called a galaxy siphonophore. That might be the longest animal on Earth. The expedition was led by the Schmidt Ocean Institute aboard their ship, the Falkor II. They explored underwater mountain peaks, and every seamount had its own unique ecosystem. Dr. Aaron Easton, who led the trip, said, "We're still astounded by what we observed. The observation of distinct ecosystems on individual seamounts highlights the importance of protecting the entire ridge, not just a few seamounts." End quote. They also found a coral that does photosynthesis at almost 200 meters deep, which is nuts, and discovered coral algae 350 meters below the surface. Altogether, they found more than 160 species, with at least 50 of them being totally new to science. Basically, it's proof that there's still a ton of wild stuff out there in the ocean we haven't found yet, and if we don't protect it, we might lose it before we even know it exists. Scientists from ETH Zurich and Caltech found something weird deep in the Pacific Ocean. They were using earthquake data to look inside the Earth, kind of like doing a giant X-ray. And they noticed some odd patches way down in the mantle, which is the super hot layer below the Earth's crust. Normally, when a big earthquake hits, the waves travel through the Earth in a certain way. But in these areas, the waves slowed down or bounced around strangely. That usually means there's something different going on down there, like a chunk of rock that's colder, denser, or made of something else entirely. What's really odd is where they found these patches. They're in places where we shouldn't see old pieces of the Earth's crust, since nothing's been pulled under the surface there recently. That breaks the usual rules of how plate tectonics work. Some scientists are now wondering if these might be leftovers from an ancient piece of the Earth's surface that got buried a long time ago, maybe even a lost world from a time we don't fully understand. Researchers exploring the wreck of the USS Yorktown, a United States Navy aircraft carrier that sank in 1942, got a surprise. So while scanning the ship with underwater robots, they spotted an old car sitting inside the hangar deck. It's a Ford station wagon from around 1940 or 1941. They think it might have been used by high-ranking officers when the ship was docked, basically as a ride to get around town. But the strange part is, when the ship was damaged in battle, the crew dumped, a bunch of heavy stuff, planes, weapons, whatever they could to keep it from sinking, really. So why was the car still on board? It's heavy. It could have been tossed like everything else, but for some reason it wasn't. Even weirder, the ship had just made a quick stop at Pearl Harbor for repairs before heading into battle. Why not take the car off then? In late 2024, a team of Spanish archaeologists pulled off something pretty incredible. They salvaged a 2,600-year-old Phoenician shipwreck from the bottom of the sea near Mauritia. This wreck, called Mazaran II, was first found back in 1994, but now they finally brought it up piece by piece. This is one of the best preserved Phoenician ships ever discovered. Carlos de Juan, the man in charge of the excavation, said, "We are facing a wreck of the Phoenician era that practically preserves its naval architecture with all the carpentry." End quote. And that is pretty rare. He also pointed out that some parts of the ship look like designs from the Levant, the eastern Mediterranean region that includes modern-day Lebanon, Syria, and Israel, where the Phoenicians originally come from, but other parts of it are totally unique. To get the wreck out safely, divers spent 2 months carefully taking it apart in 22 sections. The whole ship is around 8 meters long, basically the size of a U-Haul. Imagine you're tearing up an old fish market in Barcelona. for a new building when suddenly you hit a medieval shipwreck buried about 16 feet underground. We've all had that dream before, right? Well, earlier this month, archaeologists found a surprisingly well-preserved ship from the 14 or 1500s, and it's telling us a lot about how people back then got around by sea. The ship, nicknamed Quintadilla I, is about 10 meters long and 3 meters wide, or 32.8 feet long and 9.8 feet wide. It's packed with curved wooden ribs, over 30 of them. This was a seriously solid build. Santiago Palacios Naito, who's running the dig, said the ship has both Mediterranean and Atlantic design styles. He thinks it may have been built in the Basque Country or Galicia, two coastal areas in northern Spain that were really good at building ships. Then it ended up sailing out of Barcelona, which was a huge port back in the day. The wood is in great shape as well, because it was buried in wet soil that's almost more like clay, so it kept air out and stopped it from rotting. They're keeping the ship damp while they prep it to be studied, and along with the ship, they found pottery and tools nearby, which could tell us who was using it and what kind of trade was going on. Off the coast of Taiwan, a fisherman pulled up something unexpected from the seabed, part of a human-like jawbone. They named it Pengu 1, and when scientists got a look at it, they realized it didn't match any known species of ancient human. The bone was thick, the teeth oversized, clearly built for chewing through pretty tough material. The jaw didn't look like it belonged to Homo sapiens, but it also didn't fully align with Neanderthals either. And it could have been as young as 10,000 years, meaning whatever this mystery species was, it might have been around far longer than anyone would have thought. Well, scientists ran protein analysis on the remains, and it seems that it most likely came from a male Denisovan. Denisovans were an early human species we still know very little about when compared to Neanderthals, for example. Another strange thing, Denisovan fossils have mostly been found in Siberia and Tibet. Taiwan is way outside where they were thought to have lived. So this strange jawbone raised a lot of questions. There's a lot we know about the evolution of the human species, but also quite a bit that's still a mystery. In 1890, workers digging through a peat bog in Russia's Ural Mountains came across pieces of a giant wooden statue. It was eventually reassembled into a 9-foot-tall figure covered in carvings of shapes, faces, and symbols. It's called the Shigir Idol, and radiocarbon dating shows it's around 11,000 years old, older than the pyramids and older than Stonehenge. The carvings seem to follow a pattern, possibly telling a story or marking some kind of code. Of course, though, no one knows exactly what they mean. Most ancient wooden objects don't survive this long, but the swampy conditions of the bog kept it preserved. So it makes for a rare glimpse into the kind of symbolic thinking people were capable of at that time, way before we thought people were building anything this advanced. And parts of the statue seem to have been added in stages, like it was updated over time. So this is a culture that seemed to have a deeper sense of tradition than we usually think of with early humans. In 1911, miners digging through bat guano in Lovelock Cave in Nevada claimed to discover something that would make for one of the most controversial stories in archaeology. They found giant-sized human remains. Some reports claim the skeletons stood well over 7 feet tall, and that the bones matched up with old Paiute legends about red-haired giants called the Titicaca, who were said to be ruthless savages that were eventually driven into the caves and burned alive by the rebelling tribes. Most of the remains haven't survived, and a lot of the original documentation has been lost as well. Some of the bones were supposedly sent to museums but were never put on display. What does still exist are artifacts like oversized sandals, one measuring 15 inches, and skulls that some claim have giant features like double rows of teeth. This kind of falls into the weird, is it real or just an urban legend kind of category. Mainstream archaeologists say the skeletons, if they actually existed at all, may have just been especially tall, maybe just over 6 feet, which would have seemed giant compared to the average height at the time. But there's still debate because of how much material went missing or was never examined properly. Even now though, people still go looking for stuff in that cave, hoping to find giant bones hidden away in some nook or cranny in the cave. Personally, I'd love to find out that giant humans used to roam North America, but for now, we'll just have to assume there was some exaggeration going on here. In Western Hungary, archaeologists dug up this massive stash of ancient bronze artifacts. There were over 900 pieces, including weapons, tools, and some weird twisted items items that they couldn't really place. The hoard dates back over 3,000 years to the late Bronze Age. Why was it all left there? Well, that's still a mystery. There's no sign of a settlement or a battlefield, but these things were deliberately buried in clusters, and in some cases the metal was bent or broken, which some researchers think could have also been deliberate. That's led to the theory that all this treasure may have been part of a large-scale offering to the gods. It was clear that whoever made these things were pretty good with metal. Without anything written down though, we're left guessing. In 1908, archaeologists digging through a Minoan palace on the island of Crete found a strange clay disc. It's known as the Phaistos disc, and it's about the size of a CD, with symbols stamped into both sides in a spiral pattern. The writing isn't like anything else from the time, it doesn't match any known Minoan scripts, and no one's been able to translate it. What we do know is that the disc was made in around 1700 BCE, and that the symbols weren't etched in by hand, they were stamped. That's not something you usually see until much later in history. It's the only artifact of its kind. No other object has the same writing, at least none that we've found. It's very weird. Some researchers think it might be a hymn or some type of game. Others think it's actually a forgery, but there's no strong evidence either way because it was discovered in a proper dig and it wasn't being sold or promoted, so most experts agree that it is authentic. Still, without more examples of the same script, it's basically impossible to figure out what it says or why it was made. The Shroud of Turin is a linen cloth that some believe wrapped the body of Jesus Christ after his crucifixion, bearing what looks like a faint image of a man's face and body. The big mystery here is how the image was created. Tests have dated the cloth to medieval times, around the 14th century, but the exact way the image formed on the fabric is still unexplained. It's not a painting, and there are no signs of any pigments used. Some researchers think it was created through some kind of intense heat that reacted with the cloth, leaving the ghostly image of a man behind. Few scientists have tried to recreate the thing, but it's been unsuccessful, even with modern technology. In northern Laos, thousands of massive stone jars are scattered across the landscape. Some are the size of a person, others even bigger, just sitting out in the open, spread across hillsides and valleys. Most were carved from solid rock, and could have been there for at least 2,000 years, but nobody really knows why they were made in the first place. One theory is that they were part of ancient burial customs. Human remains and burial objects have been found near some of the jars, which kinda supports that idea. Still, it doesn't fully explain the scale of it all. Why go to that much effort to carve and move hundreds, maybe thousands of these things? And how did people with basic tools manage to haul stones that weigh over 10 tons without leaving any sign of how they did it? The layout doesn't make much sense either. Some jars are grouped close together, others sit completely alone, and a lot of sites haven't even been explored yet, mostly because the land is still dangerous from leftover bombs dropped during the Vietnam War. Until someone finds more evidence, the Plain of Jars remains a mystery. At the top of a mountain in western China, there's a cave with something strange sticking out of the walls. Old rust-colored tubes that look like metal pipes almost. They're also found running down toward a nearby saltwater lake. Thing is though, the area they're in is believed to be around 150,000 years old. That's way before any known civilization had the ability to build anything like this. Tests have shown the pipes are made of iron mixed with other materials, which has led to two main theories. Some scientists say they could be natural, maybe tree roots that turned to stone over time. Others aren't so sure. The pipes are smooth, round, and some are hollow. A few even branch out like a modern plumbing system that doesn't look random. There's never been a sign of people living near the site. No tools, no buildings, nothing that would explain who could have put them there. What do you think? Did these things form naturally, or were they built long before historians thought people were making things like this? In South Africa, deep inside ancient rock formations that are over 3 billion years old, miners started finding these weird little metallic spheres. Some are smooth, others have grooved lines running perfectly around the middle like they were etched with a machine. They're about the size of a golf ball and seem completely out of place for how old the rock is. Geologists say they're probably natural, maybe formed by volcanic activity or some kind of concretion process. That's when minerals and wet dirt or mud slowly gather around something like a shell or a leaf and harden over time, forming a solid lump. or ball. But some of these spheres seem to be perfectly balanced, with an even density all the way through, and the lines etched into them look intentional, but they're stuck in rock that predates all known life, more complex than bacteria. There's also debate about what material they're made of. Some reports say a hard metal, others say they're just mineral deposits. That's why they're often thought of as out-of-place artifacts, something that shouldn't exist in the time or place it was found. In the remote highlands of western Bolivia, there's a massive set of perfectly straight lines etched into the ground. They stretch for hundreds of miles over hills, rivers, and valleys. They're called Sajima lines. Nobody knows who made them or how. The lines aren't carved especially deep, but they've lasted for centuries. And given how long they are, you'd think there would be bends or curves in them, but that's not the case. They seem too long and too precise to be random, but there's no sign of wheels or machinery having been involved. Some researchers think they may have had some sort of spiritual purpose, maybe used for connecting sacred places, but we don't have any written records or anything. That's just a theory.
At our number 5 spot today, we have the mysterious Amazon rings. Archaeologists still can't wrap their heads around the strange ring-shaped ditches carved deep into the earth of the Amazon, long before it grew into the lush jungle we know today. These ancient earthworks predate the rainforest itself, challenging everything we once assumed about when and how this land took shape. Some experts think the rings might have served as defense perimeters, while others suggest they could have been sophisticated irrigation systems or even sacred ceremonial sites. Whatever the truth, these odd formations don't just spark curiosity, they flip the script on the long-held idea that the Amazon was untouched wilderness until Europeans arrived. In our number 4 spot today, we have the lost city of giants in Ecuador. Few discoveries rattle our understanding of the past more than what explorers claimed to find deep in the Ecuadorian jungle a little over a decade ago. Led by native guides, a group of adventurers stumbled upon crumbling ruins that looked like something out of a lost age. Towering stone blocks and what appeared to be a colossal pyramid, roughly 260 feet tall and 260 feet wide, dwarfing even today's skyscraper cranes. Scattered around were impossibly large tools, so oversized that no ordinary human could ever wield them. Local legends have long whispered of giants who once strode through these lands, shaping entire cities as if playing with toy blocks. This find, dubbed the Lost City of Giants, isn't just another wild story. It's a baffling historical detour, leaving researchers scratching their heads over who or what could have built these monuments and why no written records hint at their time on Earth. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Sri Lanka alien meteorite. No one expected a rock dropping into a Sri Lankan jungle to stir up the possibility of life beyond Earth, yet when scientists in the UK analyzed a meteorite that crash-landed there, they found something that upended assumptions. Inside were what looked like fossils and algae, tiny structures that just might point to alien origins. If that's true, it would mean that we're not alone in this universe and that life can hitch rides on cosmic debris, quietly traveling through the void before planting itself on new worlds. Naturally, not everyone is buying it. Skeptics argue that these so-called alien organisms are actually just common freshwater species, probably picked up after the meteorite made landfall. Did Earth's environment contaminate the sample, or are we staring at actual evidence that life can emerge from interstellar darkness? In our number 2 spot today, we have the Maya network discovered under Guatemala. No one expected to lift the veil on an ancient world hidden just beneath the treetops, but in 2018, cutting-edge laser surveys exposed a staggering secret in Guatemala's northern Petén region. More than 60,000 Maya ruins suddenly came into focus. Temples, pyramids, causeways, and residential areas scattered over 810 square miles of dense, leafy rainforest. Even seasoned archaeologists were completely floored. This kind of urban sprawl suggested a once thriving empire of millions, far larger than textbooks had ever hinted. The site lay tantalizingly close to known Maya cities, but these revelations reshaped the map, forcing experts to rethink just how far the Maya had spread and how deeply they influenced their lush homeland. And finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have the man-made rainforest. Not so long ago, ecologists would have bet their reputations that rainforests take eons to form. Yet, on a remote volcanic outpost called Ascension Island, a thriving jungle proved them wrong in record time. In just 150 years, a once barren landscape has given way to a dense green canopy, all thanks to a ragtag assortment of plant seeds dropped off by the British Royal Navy in 1843. Back then, Charles Darwin himself described the island as completely devoid of trees, so seeing it now, alive with towering flora and bustling wildlife, has turned ecological theory on its head. How did these foreign species team up to create something so complex so quickly? Scientists are still scrambling for answers, admitting that this unexpected explosion of life raises big questions about how ecosystems form and adapt. It's a living, breathing reminder that nature can break the rules we thought we knew. Starting off today in our number 10 spot, we have the Mount Lico rainforest. No one expected to stumble across an entirely uncharted rainforest in the modern world, yet that's exactly what happened in 2012 when a butterfly expert named Dr. Julian Bayliss spotted something unbelievable. A lush, untouched jungle hidden inside a crater high atop a mountain in Mozambique. This was not some ancient explorer's tale, it was confirmed by Google Earth images and later by a team of 28 researchers who braved treacherous cliffs, dense foliage, and dizzying heights to reach the isolated forest known as Mount Lico. Once there, the mysteries just kept piling up. They identified never-before-seen species, including a brand new butterfly christened in honor of the mountain itself. Even more baffling were the signs of past human presence. Scattered clay pots suggesting that long-lost communities had somehow found their way up this impossible terrain. No one knows who they were or how they got there, leaving scientists with more questions than answers about this remarkable green world in the sky. Next, we are talking about the Mitchell-Hedges crystal skull. Famous for making seasoned archaeologists scratch their heads in disbelief, the Mitchell-Hedges crystal skull, discovered at the ruined Maya city of Lubanton in Belize's steamy rainforest, isn't just an artifact. It's a riddle carved in stone. Unearthed in the 1920s, this flawless human skull was reportedly shaped from a single piece of pure quartz, a feat that seems impossible without advanced tools. Even today, experts armed with modern technology struggle to explain how anyone managed such precision centuries ago. Adding more fuel to the mystery, its backstory is plagued by disputes over who truly found it and when, while whispers of lost civilizations, secret rituals, and supernatural powers swirl around its legend. Scientists have tried scanning, testing, and replicating it, only to admit that the skull's creation and purpose remain unexplainable. In other words, a clear crystal curiosity that refuses to give up its secrets right in the heart of the jungle. Next, we are talking about the giant stone head of the Guatemalan jungle. Few jungle legends leave archaeologists more infuriated than the whispered tale of that colossal stone head supposedly lurking in the Guatemalan rainforest back in the 1950s. There is just one photograph, and it shows a face with strikingly European-like features, nothing like the typical Mesoamerican styles known in that part of the world. What's worse, the carving was allegedly discovered far from any known site, as if whoever made it purposely hid it from prying eyes. Then, before anyone credible could study the mysterious sculpture, guerrilla fighters reportedly blew it to pieces, taking its secrets to the grave. Now all that's left is a single blurry image and a swarm of unanswered questions. Did a forgotten civilization craft it with some lost technique? Was it a hoax? Or did it represent some outsider's influence that never made it into the textbooks? Whatever the truth may be, that vanished stone head remains one of the jungle's most maddening riddles. In our number 7 spot today, we are talking about the case of the missing birds. The sounds of birds once echoed through every corner of Panama's Barrow, Colorado island, with more than 200 bird species nesting above the dense forest floor. Today, a quarter of them are simply gone, and despite decades of research, nobody truly knows why. When the Panama Canal was completed in 1914, Yucatan Lake's waters swelled and transformed the landscape, strangling old ecosystems and supposedly clearing out top predators. Without them, ecologists suspected monkeys and kotei populations populations exploded, plundering bird nests and crippling the avian population. That neat little theory, however, didn't hold up under scrutiny. In the 1990s, when ecologist Douglas Robinson set up video surveillance, he caught a surprising culprit red-handed: snakes slithering into nests and devouring eggs. But if snakes alone were doing the damage, why did more than 45 species disappear by 2000? There's some hidden factors at work here, and decades later, researchers are still stumped. Next, we are talking about the hidden German hideout. Few discoveries spark as much speculation as the deserted stone buildings hidden deep in Argentina's remote rainforest, a place where decades-old rumors speak of war criminals escaping justice and entire hideouts awaiting their arrival. Researchers, led by Daniel Chevelzon, recently unearthed 3 mysterious, time-worn structures surrounded by dense vegetation near the Paraguayan border, an area so inaccessible and carefully chosen that it practically screamed secret refuge. Inside, they found old German coins dating back from 1938 to 1944, bits of porcelain marked Made in Germany, and carvings that hinted at a disturbing past. Historians know that as World War II ended, many high-ranking figures from a defeated European regime fled to South America, supported by a network of underground escape routes called rat lines. The plan, it seems, was to stash leaders in safe havens tucked far from prying eyes, and this hidden compound had all the hallmarks of a last resort bolt hole. What's truly puzzling is that the structures appear to have seen little, if any, use. Instead, they've been left to collapse into the jungle, their presence haunting anyone who dares to question how far desperate men would go to vanish into the green, and why this forgotten fortress still stands as an eerie monument to secrets that history has yet to fully expose.
If you're into shipwrecks, the Black Sea is like an underwater treasure chest. In 2015, a team of researchers made one of the most incredible finds in the region, an ancient Greek shipwreck, over 2,000 years old. What's amazing about these shipwrecks is how well preserved they often are. Because the Black Sea has a layer of anoxic, oxygen-free water deep down, anything that sinks below this layer doesn't really rot. It's like a giant underwater freezer. The wrecks, including the famous Greek merchant ship, are almost perfectly preserved. The shipwreck, discovered in 2015, was found at about 2,000 meters, or around 6,561 feet deep, and it was in incredible condition. The hull, the timbers, even the steering mechanism were all there. It was a huge discovery, being that it's so rare to find ancient wrecks in such good shape. This isn't the first or last wreck discovered here. There are dozens more, stretching back to the time of the ancient Greeks and Romans. The biggest question on everyone's mind now is what other surprises are sitting deep in the depths of the Black Sea. Could there be other sunken cities or undiscovered shipwrecks hiding down there? Well, the more researchers dive into the Black Sea, the more they find we've only scratched the surface. Now, this one's got a real mystery vibe about it. The Cave of the Swimmers, found in Egypt's Sahara Desert, doesn't seem like something that should be on this list. I mean, we are talking about underwater discoveries, but hear me out. Inside this cave, you'll find a series of ancient paintings on the walls, and some of them seem to depict people swimming. Something that doesn't quite add up. Why would ancient cave paintings show people swimming in the middle of the desert? I'm sure the Sahara hasn't always been a desert, but it has been for about 2 to 3 million years. These paintings, though, are only estimated to be around 10,000 years old, but they seem to show people swimming. So could there have once been a river or lake in the area that we just don't know about? The Cave of the Swimmers is famous for these unusual paintings that seem to suggest there was some kind of large body of water right where the desert is now. Lake Titicaca is a massive high-altitude lake between Bolivia and Peru. It's already famous for being one of the highest navigable lakes in the world, but here's where it gets really interesting. There's a submerged temple underneath it. Divers have found ruins in the lake that some believe could be connected to the ancient Tiwanaku civilization, a culture that existed in the Andes before the rise of the Inca. But the thing is, no one really knows how these structures ended up underwater. Some researchers believe that these temples were part of an ancient city, maybe even built to align with the stars or the movements of the sun, which was really important for Andean cultures. The theory is that Lake Titicaca could have been much lower in the far past, and that over time it flooded, swallowing parts of the city. Another thing that's really cool about these remains is that the stones used to build them aren't like any other stones found in the area. Definitely odd. Could this submerged site be part of a larger, forgotten civilization? Divers are still trying to map out just how far this site extends beneath the water. Now this one's really out there. Lake Baikal in Siberia is not only one of the oldest and deepest lakes in the world, but it's also a place where people claim to have found signs of an underwater alien base. The story goes that divers in the lake have reported seeing strange geometric shapes and metallic objects deep underwater. Some have even said they've seen alien beings. Some of these objects allegedly seem a little too perfectly shaped to be natural, and there are rumors that these objects could be remnants of a super advanced civilization, possibly even extraterrestrial, or that there's a currently existing alien base deep under the water. There have been reports of mysterious structures and strange energy fields being detected deep under the lake. Of course, it's said that these reports have been leaked by whistleblowers who have been told to stay quiet. What's really going on here? Are there just odd but natural rock formations, or is there something stranger going on? Lake Baikal is remote and deep enough that it could make for a pretty good place for a group of alien researchers to park their ships. Next up, we have the underwater cave beneath Paganica Bay in Croatia, which is not a recommended dive. The place is known for being incredibly dangerous. 4 people have died here between 2002 and 2015 on 3 separate occasions. In 2002, a diver was found dead 177 feet down in a cave wearing a dive suit but had no mask on. There was also a 12-inch blade sticking out of his chest. Now at first this seemed like a clear-cut case of foul play. 2 suspects were even arrested, but after they looked more into the diver's last dive profile from his dive computer, the cave's dimensions and other forensic evidence, it became clear that he'd likely taken his own life. It seemed that the diver, known only as MK, had gone in alone, got lost, and ran out of oxygen. As he began to drown, he found an air pocket, but knowing he wouldn't have enough air to make it back, he chose to go out quickly rather than suffer a slow, terrifying death from drowning. The cenotes in the Yucatan Peninsula were super important to the Maya. These water-filled sinkholes weren't just places to get fresh water, they were seen as gateways to the underworld. For the Maya, they were more than just natural wonders. Guillermo de Anda, a specialist from Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History, said these cenotes were, quote, the main scenario of the myth of creation for the Maya. And these cenotes really are like a hidden world. Above the surface, they look like beautiful spots with crystal clear water, lush vegetation, and massive stalactites, but underwater, these cenotes lead to massive labyrinths of underwater caves, some of which are still mostly unexplored. People practiced rituals here. Offerings, altars, even bones have been discovered deep inside, giving us a look at how crucial these places were to Mayan life. One of the most famous cave systems is Sac-Actun. It's the largest underwater cave in the world, believed to connect to other cave systems, possibly making the whole network over 1,000 kilometers, or just over 620 miles long. Inside these caves, explorers have found Mayan artifacts, animal remains, and even evidence of human sacrifices. The cenotes and caves of the Yucatan could completely change how we understand the early Maya, with some of the discoveries hinting at settlements and rituals long before the rise of the classic Maya civilization. In the spring of 2017, divers Sam Meacham and Fred Davos squeezed their way through a tight passageway, only 28 inches wide, deep in Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. After swimming for half a mile, they finally reached what they couldn't believe was in front of them. A 11,000-year-old ochre mine, untouched and almost perfectly preserved. The site, named La Mina, was a time capsule. There were pits, broken stalactites used as hammers, and even old charcoal from fires. Early humans have been extracting red ochre pigment, which was later used in everything from cave paintings to mortuary rituals. Archaeologist Brandy MacDonald had been studying ochre for years and said this discovery was unlike anything she'd ever seen. The discovery gave the researchers a rare look into how some of the first people in the Americas lived, long before the rise of the Mayan civilization. Scientists also found remains of early humans, most famously the remains of a girl they named Naya. who fell to her death around 13,000 years before. The question was, why had she gone so deep into the caves? As Roberto Junco from Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History stated, what the hell were they going down there for? This wasn't an isolated site. Radiocarbon dating revealed at least 2 other ochre mines in the area dating back between 10,000 and 12,000 years ago. This shows that early humans had a sophisticated knowledge of their environment, with well-planned mining expeditions that lasted thousands of years. It's still a bit of a mystery as to why they went so deep into these caves, but there's a strong possibility that they weren't just used for practical reasons, they may have been spiritual too. The ochre they were mining was obviously important, often used in rituals. Holly Moyes, an expert on cave rituals, talked about how caves in early human history were often seen as sacred spaces, saying caves produced all kinds of good and evil, adding that the deep dark environments were perfect for rituals. For the Maya and other Mesoamerican cultures, ochre was sacred, possibly seen as a way to connect with the underworld. The Hoyo Negro, or black hole, is one of the most mysterious underwater caves in Mexico, and for good reason. Found once again in the Yucatan Peninsula, this place is kind of a time capsule. Scientists have discovered some really unexpected treasures here. When divers first explored it, they found an almost perfectly preserved set of remains belonging to a human who would have lived around 13,000 years ago, one of the earliest inhabitants of the Americas. The bones were also found along the remnants of extinct animals like mammoths, giant ground sloths, and saber-toothed tigers.
Next is the ice storm. Antarctica is one of the most remote and isolated places on Earth. Only a handful of people are allowed to visit on tours, and even fewer are chosen to live on the continent. So it's no wonder Antarctic ghost stories have a special flavor of terror. In 2016, a small outpost was rocked with a storm, and the 3 occupants were trapped inside the squall. The storm was a big one, set to last weeks, and so the crew hunkered down. It didn't take long for the first cracks to show, even amongst these professional researchers. After a week of complaining of a growing whining and speaking in his head, Mike Leash was eventually scrabbling at the doors, even as his colleagues tried to restrain him, and eventually bursted out into the storm. Despite their desire to save his life, none of the crew was going to go out into a zero-visibility Antarctic ice storm, and Mike disappeared. The storm cooled off 2 days later, leaving the world covered in a thick coating of snow. The crew went out to find what happened to Mike, only to see him standing just 100 steps from the front door. When they approached him, though, they were shocked to find it was just his clothes, frozen solid and completely empty of Mike's body. Despite a recovery attempt, Mike was not able to be found. It's thought he may have stripped while hypothermic and then been buried under the snowstorm, but why then would his clothes be standing in place? Something strange happened here. And finally is the Wilkes gravity anomaly. A negative gravity anomaly was detected under the ice of Wilkes Land, and it has scientists stumped. It may sound a little sci-fi, but there are actually gravitational anomalies all over the world, and they can help us discover some pretty interesting things. If the Earth were actually a totally smooth, consistent ball, then gravity would be experienced the same all over the planet. But the Earth isn't smooth, and gravity is not consistent. These gravitational anomalies are small shifts away from the predicted ideal gravitational value, and can be used to find dense ore deposits beneath the Earth's surface. Other things can also cause anomalies though, like caves or caverns, where the Earth isn't as dense as it hypothetically should be. A positive anomaly means gravity is stronger than expected there, maybe due to a mountain or dense elements underground, while a negative gravitational anomaly means gravity is weaker than expected. This could be for any number of reasons, but usually an unseen void in the Earth is the culprit. In the case of the Wilkes gravity anomaly, scientists still aren't really sure what's causing it. However, the most plausible theory is that of an old meteor crater that was then frozen over by the ice from the Ice Age. Still, no one is really truly sure what is causing this anomaly. The Antarctic Impulsive Transient Antenna, or ANITA, is a device that measures cosmic rays, more specifically the high-energy neutrinos that come off them. ANITA floated on a balloon high above the Antarctic ice sheet, gazing at the stars for several years. So imagine the researchers' shock when the instruments meant to read energy coming from the stars, detected those same high-energy neutrinos coming up from the Earth. Now, low-energy neutrinos can pass through quite a bit of material, as they are very small and can pass through the gaps in atoms. But high-energy neutrinos have a much larger footprint and are more easily deflected and intercepted. So how did these relatively easy to deflect neutrinos come up through the Earth? Did they pass all the way through, or is there another explanation? Scientists have proposed everything from neutrinos passing all the way through the planet or getting reflected around inside like an inverse disco ball, to a discovery of an entirely new neutrino or even dark matter. However, others think the answer is much more mundane. The neutrinos simply came down from outer space, missing Anita, and then entered the Antarctic ice, where they hit a sort of compacted snow called firn. Firn is between glacial ice and snow, and can have pockets of low or high density, which may allow it to reflect neutrinos back up towards space. Scientists still aren't really sure what's going on though. Next is Shackleton's ship. Ernest Shackleton is one of the great explorers of world history, having made his fame off of the rather disastrous attempt to reach the South Pole with his ship Endurance. It wasn't his first trip to Antarctica, and far from his first time in the cold, but this time the ship got stuck in an ice floe. The crew would spend 2 months on the ice before managing to make an equally long journey to rescue, but the ship was swallowed whole by the floe, and then vanished into the cruel Antarctic Sea. You'd be forgiven for thinking the ship had sunk, totally destroyed, and would never be seen again, but you'd be wrong. In the mid-1960s, another ship went searching for the Endurance, tracing her path, and would get to see a once-in-a-lifetime event. The ice floe heaved, split, and spat forth the Endurance, her hull pushed high into the sky before she was sucked back under the ice and vanished for good. In 2022, researchers would successfully discover the wreckage beneath the ice, scanning it through the crust for a 3D rendering. Being stuck beneath dangerous sea ice 3 kilometers under the surface, it is likely Endurance will remain there for the rest of history. Next is the green crab crisis. Green crab are some of the most successful colonizers in the animal kingdom. Rapidly adaptable, small enough to survive anywhere, often in large numbers, and very successful predators, these crabs can take up roots just about anywhere the water is the right temperature for them to live in. So you might think it's a little silly to bring a whole bunch of them and start farming them off the coast of Chile, and now, several years after that decision was made, we know it was a bad idea. Green crab have been swarming up the Pacific coast of the Americas, devastating several ecosystems. But they also taste delicious, so it isn't too bad. It's not like there's nothing that eats crabs along the Pacific coast anyways, but Antarctica is a different story. For now, the waters are too cold for the green crab to push that far south, but if we know anything about the future, it's that the world's waters will warm more. And as they do, the crabs will slowly flood south, or get picked up and carried in the ballast of ships, and Antarctica will eventually be infested with them. Antarctica is a unique environment, with much less diversity and competition to halt the spread of the green crab, which makes it especially dangerous and vulnerable. So far as we know, Antarctica is currently free of green crab influence, but that may not last long. Next is Totten Glacier. Melting sea ice is one of the greatest threats to the world's oceans. It raises sea levels, decreases salinity, and introduces more cold water than would normally be in the ocean. But recently scientists discovered something even more chilling. A massive glacier field in Antarctica known as the Totten Glacier catchment, which is under serious threat. The ice field is larger than the more famous West Antarctic ice sheet, and should be less of a threat due to its size and therefore inherent stability, except it isn't stable. Deep sea channels beneath the ice are pumping warm water into the underside of the glacier, encouraging it to melt faster than it should. Should the entire field melt, global sea levels would rise 11 feet, destroying numerous cities around the world. Next is Maud Rise Polynya. The Antarctic ice sheet may look smooth and pristine from the air, but it is absolutely not. It's filled with small holes and cracks which are known as polynya. Polynya are complex and can occur for a vast variety of reasons, often many of which are deeply interconnected. Maud Rise Polynya is, however, one of the largest and most sudden polynyas ever to appear. It practically appeared overnight, like a sudden gash in the ice sheet larger than the country of Wales. Unlike other polynyas which come and go, however, Maud Rise has not shrunk, resealed, or vanished. It's believed that a strong current, strengthened by unusually warm and salty water, encountered the deep-sea mountain of Maud Rise, which then drove this current up its face and into the ice sheet above. This new warm water current is then thought to have pushed the ice apart, opening up this strange and massive gash in the sheet. It's unknown how long the ice will stay this way, but it will likely be for decades if not longer. Then again, with how quickly the world's climate is changing, scientists really can't make any certain predictions.
One of the more intriguing aspects of the Anunnaki theory involves their supposed connection to the biblical Nephilim. The Nephilim, as described in the book of Genesis, were giants, offsprings of the sons of God and the daughters of men. Some believe that these sons of God were actually the Anunnaki, extraterrestrial beings who came to Earth and mated with human women, resulting in a race of these giant beings. This idea doesn't just come from conspiracy theorists, it has its roots in ancient texts and interpretations of religious mythology. Now, some folks take this a step further and argue that the Nephilim were part of this hybridization experiment outright conducted by the Anunnaki. They claim that these giants might have had special abilities and knowledge or powers passed down from their alien ancestors. When it comes to ancient languages, the Sumerians were ahead of the time. They developed one of the earliest known written systems, cuneiform. But what's interesting for those who subscribe to the Anunnaki theory is the idea that there's some lost Anunnaki language buried in these ancient texts. Scholars have done extensive work decoding the Sumerian and Akkadian languages, but some believe there's more to these texts. They claim that certain symbols and words or phrases in Sumerian writing could actually represent an entirely different language, filled with cryptic messages that could contain knowledge of advanced technology, extraterrestrial history, or some even say secret instructions for humanity. The Laetoli footprints are some of the oldest known evidence of early human movement, dating back over 3.6 million years ago. They were discovered in Tanzania in the 70s and gave archaeologists this intriguing look at how early hominins walked. These footprints were made by bipedal creatures, and while they're typically said to come from early human ancestors, there are some alternative theories that they may have come from something a little more out there. Some argue that the footprints could be evidence of giants, maybe even extraterrestrial beings who once walked the earth. The logic behind this is that the footprints appeared to be too large to have come from anything less than, well, a giant. Cylinder seals from ancient Mesopotamia are small cylindrical objects used to stamp images or writing onto clay. Dating back to around the 3rd millennium BCE, these seals often show gods and kings and scenes from their mythology. Some of these seals depict the Anunnaki interacting with humans. Now again, were these just artistic interpretations, or were these ancient people depicting things they were actually seeing? Were the Anunnaki actually real beings who lived among us? You'll notice that in some of these pieces, the Anunnaki are shown holding tools and doing things that seem to show they had this advanced knowledge and technology. Some people think that these seals might be a visual record of the Anunnaki's interactions with our ancestors, shaping human civilization. But interpreting them is tricky, and there's no clear explanation of what they really mean. Some say they're just a reflection of Sumerian religious beliefs. Others think these images could be evidence that extraterrestrials played a role in ancient Mesopotamia. Back in 1877, during digs at Tello, the ancient site of Girsu in Iraq, archaeologists came across these 2 large terracotta cylinders. These weren't just any artifacts. They were the Gudea cylinders, dating back to around 2125 BCE. Crafted by Gudea, the ruler of an ancient city-state called Lagash, they're inscribed with a Sumerian myth, the building of Ningirsu's temple. At over 2 feet tall, these cylinders are hefty and covered in cuneiform script. Cylinder A has 30 columns, cylinder B has 24. They recount Gudea's vision and the meticulous construction of the temple dedicated to the god Ningirsu. The text details the grandeur of the temple, and what's fascinating is how these inscriptions blend myth with Gudea's political agenda. The cylinders basically describe Gudea's dreams and how he felt like the gods were guiding him. It's the same sort of tactic most cult leaders use in modern times. Something else really amazing about these artifacts though, some people think the stories in these cylinders might have been part of the inspiration for later religious beliefs, like the Bible's stories about building Solomon's temple. Today, you can see these cylinders in the Louvre Museum in Paris, and they're pretty cool because they give us a direct connection to ancient Mesopotamian culture and religion. Alright, so here's something that's been popping up more recently, well, in the last several decades or so, the mystery of the ancient city Dolmun. Now, according to Sumerian texts, Dolmun was a paradise-like place where the gods could rest and rejuvenate. Some legends even say this city was the place where the gods came from. It was supposedly the home of Enki, one of the big Anunnaki gods, and also linked to the famous myth of the Epic of Gilgamesh. So you probably know where I'm going with this. Was this city a complete myth, a partial myth, or could it have really existed? Well, there was a place called Dolmun. It was an important place, a major trading hub. It's mentioned in loads of ancient texts, but it was always considered to be some kind of symbolic city. But in the last several decades, archaeologists digging in Bahrain, a small island in the Persian Gulf, actually found it. They uncovered ruins, massive structures, and burial mounds that date back thousands of years. But is there truth to the myths about this place? Did the powerful Anunnaki once call it home? The Anunnaki, were they gods, aliens, or something in between? Ancient Sumerian texts might hold the key to unlocking their secrets. There's the mystery of the Laetoli footprints in Tanzania. Could they be the remnants of giants or extraterrestrials who once roamed Earth? And the cylinder seals of Mesopotamia. Could these ancient carvings actually be proof of extraterrestrial involvement in our history? These are mysterious Anunnaki discoveries scientists cannot explain. If you've ever dived into the world of ancient mysteries and extraterrestrial theories, you've probably come across the Anunnaki at some point. But who exactly were they? Well, in the world of ancient astronaut theories, the Anunnaki are often portrayed as a race of these advanced extraterrestrial beings who came to Earth thousands and thousands of years ago. Originating from the ancient Sumerians, though, who lived in what's now modern-day Iraq, the Anunnaki were said to be gods who helped in shaping early human civilization, influencing everything from agriculture to advanced technology. Some even believe that they created humans themselves. Think of them like the ancient version of superheroes or divine beings who had control over natural forces, life, and death. They were often shown as super important, with a lot of influence over kings and kingdoms. In a way, the Anunnaki were believed to be the reason things worked in the world. Everything from the seasons to how people behaved was thought to be under their watchful eyes. So, it's no surprise that these entities described in the earliest known form of writing are still talked about today. So there's a little story that's been circulating online. Supposedly in 2024, archaeologists working in Iran's desert region uncovered a tomb, estimated to be around 12,000 years old. The burial site contained artifacts like metallic objects, pottery, and skeletal remains. Some of the items had symbols that looked a lot like the depictions of the Anunnaki found in the Sumerian records. The Anunnaki were often described in Sumerian texts as beings who arrived on Earth hundreds of thousands of years ago, supposedly to extract resources like gold, and that they created humans through genetic altering to put them to work as a labor force. Now, these accounts are rooted in mythology, but the recent discovery in Iran has led some to speculate about a possible connection between these ancient stories and the artifacts found. Apparently, researchers are carrying out DNA analysis on the remains and artifacts to try and determine their origins. The Sumerian king lists are ancient artifacts that are lists of Sumerian cities, the kings that ruled there, and the lengths of their reigns. They're strange historical documents that have caused a lot of debate. Some of these rulers are said to have reigned for thousands of years. Now, historians are quick to point out that this is probably symbolic, meant to elevate the king's status and portray them as these godlike figures. But for those interested in the Anunnaki, this list is seen as evidence that these beings might have played a part in extending the lifespan of humans. Some suggest that the Anunnaki may have somehow altered human genetics, giving some of us extraordinarily long lifespans. Others believe that this list could indicate that the kings were in fact semi-divine or even part Anunnaki themselves. The Dendera light relief is something you've probably seen floating around the internet. It's a carving found in the Hathor temple at Dendera in Egypt that appears to show what some people think looks a lot like a light bulb. The relief shows a figure holding this bulb-like object with something resembling a cord attached to it, which has made some wonder if the ancient Egyptians had access to electrical technology. Some conspiracy theorists believe that this might be proof the Egyptians had help from extraterrestrials who might have brought this knowledge with them, and those who get a little more specific often bring up the Anunnaki. Mainstream scholars, of course, explain the carving differently, arguing that the relief shows the Egyptian god Horostamus emerging from a lotus flower, a common motif in Egyptian mythology that symbolizes creation. But what if it's kinda both? See, a lot of Anunnaki theorists would argue that ancient cultures would usually explain things they couldn't understand with myth, using symbolic imagery to try and make sense of what they saw. All the same though, we can't find any conclusive evidence of advanced electronic devices in ancient Egypt. It's possible that the Dendera light is really just an artistic representation of a story, but with all the mystery and wonder surrounding the ancient Egyptians, some aren't so sure it's that simple.
What if you could hear a low, constant hum and no one else could? In the small town of Taos, New Mexico, hundreds of residents report hearing a mysterious humming sound day and night. The problem? No known source can be found. No machines, no underground pipelines, nothing. The phenomenon, nicknamed the Taos Hum, has been studied since the early 1990s. Some say it's tinnitus, others blame electromagnetic interference, but the hum is directional, and people report being able to move closer or farther away from it. It's been picked up in other parts of the world too, from the UK to Australia, but there is still no clear explanation. Giant rocks, some weighing hundreds of pounds, mysteriously move across the desert floor, leaving trails behind them. Welcome to Racetrack Playa in Death Valley. These sailing stones have baffled scientists for decades. The rocks appear to move entirely on their own, often in different directions as if pushed by an invisible hand. In 2014, researchers finally observed thin ice sheets combined with wind slowly dragging the stones, but not all the stones moved at the same time, and some trails changed direction mid-movement. Something even their model couldn't explain. The mystery isn't entirely solved. Some still believe there's more going on beneath the surface. In 2011, a group of treasure hunters stumbled across something at the bottom of the Baltic Sea, and no one knows what it is. At nearly 200 feet wide, the object looks like a crashed UFO, complete with right angles, symmetrical features, and even what some believe are stairs. It became known as the Baltic Sea Anomaly. When sonar images went viral, scientists rushed to explain it away as a rock formation, but here's the real kicker. Some dive teams reported electronics malfunctioning near the site. Geological surveys come back inconclusive, others argue it's just a glacial rock, but until someone recovers a sample or maps it properly, it remains one of the strangest underwater discoveries ever. In a rare celestial twist, the sun rose 2 days early in Greenland, and no one's quite sure why. On January 13th, 2021, residents were shocked when the sun appeared 48 hours earlier than expected after the polar night. Normally, they don't see the sunrise again until January 15th. Some scientists speculated it might have been due to unusual atmospheric refraction caused by melting ice, others blamed shifting horizons, but even these explanations didn't account for the full effect. Locals described the phenomenon as deeply unsettling, like time had reset itself. Whether it was an optical illusion or something more cosmic, it left scientists digging through models for answers and coming up short. Nature is supposed to follow rules, laws of physics, weather patterns, predictable outcomes, but clearly it doesn't always get the memo. One morning in Jodhpur, India, the sky didn't just thunder, it screamed. On December 18th, 2012, residents across the city heard a deafening explosion from the sky. No aircraft, no weather systems, no military activity, just a massive, ear-splitting boom that shook homes and rattled windows. The sound lasted for nearly 5 seconds and was heard over a wide radius. Here's where it gets really creepy. Scientists, meteorologists, and even defense agencies investigated and came up with absolutely nothing. No seismic activity, no sonic booms, no atmospheric anomalies. Some compared the sound to what's heard before meteor impacts, except no impact was ever found. To this day, no one knows what caused the Jodhpur boom. There's a river deep in the Amazon that literally boils alive anything that falls in it. And it shouldn't exist. Located in the Peruvian rainforest, the Shenay Timpishka, or Boiling River, reaches temperatures up to 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit or 93 degrees Celsius. That is hot enough to kill small animals instantly. What's bizarre is that boiling rivers are typically found near volcanoes or geothermal hotspots, but this one isn't near either. Andreas Russo, a geophysicist, studied it in 2011 and confirmed there is no volcanic activity to explain the heat. Local legends speak of the river being sacred, protected by spirits. Scientists are still baffled. What heats this water so intensely remains a mystery. Lightning is supposed to strike downward, but in Oklahoma, it decided to go up. On a stormy May evening in 2010, a NASA aircraft studying thunderstorms captured something shocking. Gigantic bolts of lightning shooting upward from the cloud tops into space. These are now known as gigantic jets, but here's the catch. Even after multiple recordings, scientists still can't fully explain how or why these massive lightning bolts leap 50 miles up into the atmosphere. They behave nothing like typical lightning and challenge everything we thought we knew about electrical storms. What if I told you there's a place on Earth where lightning strikes up to 260 nights a year for 10 straight hours a night? That is a lake in Venezuela home to the Catatumbo lightning. This freak weather system produces more than 1 million lightning bolts a year, and it's been going on for centuries. What causes it? Well, that's the puzzle. Scientists have a few theories. Heat, moisture, mountain ranges, but none can explain why it's this intense and this consistent. It's like Earth's own version of a haunted electrical storm. Imagine stepping outside and seeing red rain pouring from the sky. Sounds kind of like a horror movie, right? Well, it actually happened twice. In the Indian state of Kerala, red-colored rain fell for weeks in 2001 and again in 2012. Initial theories ranged from dust storms to algae, but lab tests found something even stranger. Red particles with cell-like structures, but no DNA. That led to a wild theory from some researchers that the particles could be extraterrestrial in origin. While that's still debated, no conclusive natural explanation has ever been agreed on. The skies remain one of the weirdest weather events in modern history. In the remote tundra of Siberia, the ground itself suddenly exploded open, forming massive, perfectly round craters. The first of these sinkholes was discovered in 2014, some as deep as 100 feet. Scientists initially blamed melting permafrost, but that didn't account for the explosive force or the strange shape. Later studies showed the craters were likely caused by underground methane gas igniting under pressure, but no one's fully sure what triggers these massive blasts. One of the craters was even large enough to fit a helicopter. These natural time bombs are still appearing, and they've got researchers deeply concerned.
In October of 2024, archaeologists diving near the ancient Greek site of Assini came across a long-lost sunken port. They found stone docks and the foundations of what used to be warehouses. The team was led by Dr. Maria Papadopoulou from the Hellenic Institute of Marine Archaeology, who said the, quote, architectural features we've identified point to a highly organized port facility. Translation, this was a legit shipping hub, and that's important because it's changed what researchers thought about how advanced ports in this region were thousands of years ago. Using sonar and underwater excavation technology, the team mapped the whole area. They also found fragments of old clay jars and trade goods, basically the ancient Greek version of shipping containers. So this was a pretty busy trading port back in the day, but over time, it got swallowed up by the sea. For years, deep holes scattered across the ocean floor near Big Sur, California had scientists confused. They didn't seem to be caused by sea creatures, earthquakes, or people. They were just these strange, wide craters on the seabed. But in May of last year, researchers from the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, or MBARI, and Stanford May have finally solved the mystery. Turns out these holes are probably caused by methane gas slowly leaking up through the ocean floor. As that gas builds up underground, it creates pressure that eventually forces sediment out of the way, leaving behind these craters. They're called pockmarks, and while scientists have known about stuff like this in other places, this is the first time they've really pinned down how they form in this specific area. And these pockmarks could help researchers understand how methane escapes from the ocean floor into the water, possibly even the atmosphere. And that matters because methane is a powerful greenhouse gas. As ocean temperatures and underwater pressure changes, it's possible we'll see more of this kind of seepage. So while the mystery may be solved, it just opened up a whole new set of questions about what's happening in our oceans and what it could mean for the climate. As of April of 2025, scientists confirmed something pretty grim. About 84% of coral reefs around the world have been affected by a global bleaching event that started way back in 2023. It's now officially the fourth mass coral bleaching event ever recorded, and it's the most widespread one yet. So bleaching happens when ocean water gets too warm for too long. Corals respond by ejecting the tiny algae living inside them. That algae is what gives them their color and most of their energy. Without them, the coral turns white. If the water doesn't cool off fast enough, those corals will then just die. Reefs in the Caribbean, the Pacific, the Red Sea, and parts of Florida are getting hit with this, and when coral suffers, everything around it does too. These reefs are home to thousands of creatures. They're like underwater cities. They provide food, shelter, protection from storms, and according to the NOAA, which is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, temperatures reached record highs in many reef areas in 2024. In May of last year, a massive solar flare slammed into Earth's magnetic field, and the effects weren't just felt up in space or around the poles. For the first time, researchers recorded distortions all the way down on the ocean floor. Ocean Networks Canada, which monitors the sea floor, picked up some strange behavior in their magnetic compasses. During the solar flare, those readings spiked, showing that the burst of energy from the sun was powerful enough to ripple through the planet's magnetic shield and leave a mark on instruments thousands of meters underwater. This is a big deal, because while we've known for a long time that solar storms can disrupt satellites, GPS systems, and power grids on land, we haven't really seen their impact beneath the ocean. So how will strong storms in the future affect deep-sea technology, undersea cables, or marine life that may rely on magnetic fields to navigate? In 2024, a team from NOAA and the Schmidt Ocean Institute discovered something incredible deep in the Atlantic Ocean, a brand new hydrothermal vent field along the mid-Atlantic range. These vents, sometimes called the black smokers, spew superheated mineral-rich water from under the Earth's crust. That might not sound like much, but they're a huge deal. These environments are extreme, pitch black, scalding hot, and yet all these strange life forms live in them. Of course, they don't rely on sunlight. Instead, they use chemicals from the vents to survive, making them some of the weirdest ecosystems on the planet. So now we have a brand new hydrothermal vent to explore, which will help scientists piece together more about how life might exist in other extreme environments, even ones not on Earth. So there you go. Even in 2025, we're still finding alien-like worlds right here on our home planet.